Sage Bender, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. How are you, Mr. Chris?
So good, my friend. We got horses in the background. We can't complain.
Can we pay homage to how aesthetic this looks? This is such a good setup. I'm very, very excited to be here.
How important is the friends that you have around you?
Wow, we're just diving right in, huh? It's funny. I got a comment on my Instagram the other day, and I don't get a lot of hate comments, honestly. Like I have a pretty positive audience, but somebody was like, man, you pose like a female, like real men don't have friends, they have partners. Or he said, real men don't have best friends, they have partners. And that was one of the funniest things to me. I adore my friends. My friends are some of the best people on earth. We have a group of us from all over the United States, but we have a set group within Austin as well. Fonz, Ethan, Tin, Flacco. It's a great group of people. And Noah and Noah and Fonz have both been on here, and for good reason. Those people are some of the best people, and we all walk different paths, but the unity between us is amazing. And the ability to have friends that look out for you and take care of you and are there for you and do everything in the same sense out of passion, love, and representation of being good people, unparalleled and absolutely necessary. And I think I grew up in a place in Memphis where I didn't have a lot of close friends. And then I moved to a place in Florida where I had friends, but they were bad influences. And one of the main factors in moving to Austin was seeing the way that the guys here worked and operated. And I was like, I want that. And not only do I want that, I need that, especially at the phase I was being like 23, right on that, pivotal arch in life where it can either go up or down pretty drastically. Best decision of my life.
Why do you feel like you needed it?
Sometimes the people that surround you are very important to open your eyes to what you can't see. Okay. My friends would all risk their friendship with me to keep me accountable, to see where I'm going or if I'm going down a bad path. I was in a very long relationship prior to this, a little over 3 years, and they were during very, very pivotal years of my life, from the time I was 21 to the time I was 24. I've been through the most I've ever been in life within those 3 years. Stepping out of that relationship was the realization that I had attached a lot of what I had known in life to the person that I was with. And the negativity that comes with that is when you step out of that, you lose sight of yourself and lose sight of who you are and what you want to do. Because before that, it was always associated with someone else, especially when you live with them and you have a very close relationship with them. Stepping out of that, one, was the perspective that all my friends saw me go through this kind of crash out phase where I went and did everything and anything and just tried to live as freely as possible. Like, you cut the head off the chicken and let them in the street, But there was a time and point where every single one of them came to me individually and said, I'm worried about you and you need to fix this and you need to change this. And you are a direct representation of us. And you need to figure out how to be a direct representation for you that benefits everyone else around you. You're a leader, you're a representation, you're an influencer, and that's not just a light term. To influence is to lead. And you can do that in positive ways and you can do that in negative ways. And so the reason I need people in my life is I'm not always going to see that. The path I was going, coming out of that relationship, was not a path that I was aware in the surrounding areas of who and what I was affecting. And that's where my friends were absolutely necessary in that. And there are so many phases in life going from 21 to 30 years old that you're going to hit those points. Every single one of us are going to have points where we struggle and need that same from out of all of us. And that's why we keep each other accountable.
So the people that were back at your hometown saying they were worried, like you were losing yourself in a sense, there was like an aspect of you where you felt like, because, when you needed the change, you were getting affirmed that by other people around you. You were mentioning there was people in your life telling you that something was off. Is that what was happening?
Yeah, I just like it within the Austin group of my friends.
Oh, the Austin group of your friends. Right. So I guess like even if you look at your life and what people see online, at least, it's a friend group that people are very attracted to and they want to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you weren't even in Austin and you got a part of it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to know and understand, like what did you do to put yourself out there to be able to attract people that now you get along with, that are thriving, that make you want to win? Because like, you didn't grow up in this big town. You didn't do all of this stuff with all of these people. It was like forged through whatever you've done in your own life. What do you feel like was the thing that made you put yourself out there and be able to meet all these people that so many people look up to?
That's actually a great question. And it's something that I think all of us get very frequently is, how do I get a friend group like this? How do I live a life like this? How do I become like you? And I think this can be said for your faith, for your love life, for your friends. Okay. The goal is never, you have a path, and whatever that path is, that's for you. That's a straightforward path. You have love, you have faith, you have friends, you have passions, maybe sins. All these different factors are roads that can lead you off that straight path. My coach was somebody that has coached me in jiu-jitsu since I was 6 years old. He was like a father figure to me. And he had 2 sons, incredibly talented in jiu-jitsu. And they both quit because they went to pursue women, right? They had more potential than any 2 kids I have ever seen step forward in this sport. He coached me since I was like 7, 8 years old, before I even thought that, I wanted to ever look at a woman, and like, he said, I promise you, don't ever do anything you do for a woman or for a friend or anything. Solely focus on yourself and live passionately and perseverantly and through integrity, and do all that determinedly, and you will find your people. And I do not have the same accolades as any of the guys there. I came to Austin in 2024 to run the half marathon. Okay. I work for a company named Haas, and we're a fitness apparel brand, and they were based in Austin. And my boss said, yo, run this half marathon with me or you're fired. And I said, all right, let's do it. He goes, I have some friends I want you to meet out here. There's some boys and I think you would really like them. At the time, I had my own business. I had a jiu-jitsu gym. I was training very heavily in jiu-jitsu. Never really ran. It wasn't really my thing, but fitness, fashion, all these other aspects were very similar. And within like a week of meeting them, I knew I wanted to be in that city. And I think that's to be said. Like, obviously you have a great time with anybody, you're going to want to do these things. But the most important thing is that all of us have our own thing, and we live passionately through it, and we all have our own vibe. Are we similar? Yes. Are we all heavily tatted up? Yeah. Are we decently good looking? Yeah. Works out. We're a sexy group. But it's so important to just solely be passionate in what you do. When I stopped chasing women and just solely be passionate, work on my faith, work on my being, work on my integrity, that's when the best people in my life have stepped forward. In Florida, I had a very different life. I was a very Christian raised kid up until the point I was 18. I never smoked, I never drank, I never did anything. So stepping into living with very religious parents to having complete freedom at the age of 19 by myself in a place like Daytona Beach, Florida, complete tanked. And the way that I was living was solely for the party and the experience. And so the friends I had matched that experience and path. Whereas now, turning that around, almost dying from that experience, and then moving to a different place, separating from those friends, stepping away from that style of lifestyle, the drugs I was doing, and all these negative connotations, and then being surrounded by people that were completely in a different light, completely different life. So live passionately through yourself, and those people will come, but don't ever chase it.
Yeah.
If you do the right thing, we're all going to be working like this, and every now and then one of us will go this way, and then we all just push it back onto the path.
Yeah. It's that quote, if you spend all your time chasing butterflies, they're just going to fly away. But if you build the beautiful garden, the butterflies will come to you. And and like when we think about that, we spend so much time chasing, but the more we chase, the less we seem to receive. You ever notice that the more you feel like you need something, the more you feel like you are dependent on relying on getting the thing, the less it seems to come into your life.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you just seem to let go and you go, okay, I'm going to remove this tension between that, and I'm just going to focus on me and build this garden. All of a sudden, all these butterflies start to come.
Right.
It's like the habits that you've always struggled to hold on to, they seem to become effortless. The people that you want in your life, they seem to just come into your life. The willingness to try something new and take a leap, like all of these things kind of happen way more effortlessly the less you put in effort on that thing that you're like feeling like you need. And I like this lens of being able to look within and go, okay, like if I keep going down this route, maybe I'm not going to be in a place that I want to be. Let's change something in our life.
Right. Absolutely. Like my coach would also give me a quote. He was like, you were so busy chasing the moon, you forgot to realize you're among the stars, you know, and like same concept, same ideology. And like, it's really a beautiful thing, but I think people overcomplicate life. You know, you have thousands of people in the world. Every day I see probably a plethora of 40 new influencers, all with their own opinion, you know, micro influencers, regular people, you know, fashion influencers. Everybody has a different opinion on something. And I think people overcomplicate it because they feel that they have to input everybody's opinion. Sometimes you just got to remember to break it down, keep it simple. And like life really is that simple. Live with love, live with integrity, be kind. And I fail at that a lot. I've had such a battle with God because I know what I want as a Christian and through God, but I recognize how I'm living at the same time. There's a sermon last weekend that I went to that he speaks about. There's a difference between having good intentions and living in intentions. And that's something that is my greatest struggle. And I admit that a lot of times the reason I publicize my faith is to keep myself accountable, that if I am going to say this, then I have to do these things. And it's not always an ideal route, but like it's a struggle, you know, and like you just got to keep it simple. And life really is that simple, you know. And I think Fonz does a great demonstration of doing that and like having his own vibe. And I've always respected that out of him. And like it's very important to surround yourself with people like that.
When you say have your own vibe, what do you mean by that? And what specifically is the thing that is attractive that you like? Like what is it authenticity? Like what's the thing that makes you go, oh yeah, like that about Fonz is good to be around?
I think two sides of that. I've realized recently that like when you think about what we do, we work with a lot of the same brands, a lot of the same companies, same races, same people, same events. And so when you have that often with this many similar guys that are all doing the same thing, it's very easy to lose sight of yourself. And Fawn said this to me the other day. He goes, I don't really know what you want. And it was like, it was a very constructive criticism thing on his part, where he was like, sometimes I feel you get lost in the flow and you forget to light your own spark, you know, and keep your own fire going. And I think part of that is kind of partially because of what I've been going through. It's easier to lean on others than to be strong enough to create your own fire. With Fonz, I've always respected it very much so. He's one of my best friends, you know, and we've gotten incredibly close over the last, you know, year or so of knowing each other. And he's unapologetically him. And it pisses me off sometimes. But someone that is not afraid to say no, knows what he wants, and represents it well is something that's so difficult to do simply. And I think from the very beginning, Fonz has had a very unique vibe about him. You know, I have my own thing. I have a unique vibe about me. He's definitely a little more calm-sided variation. But like I noticed that in the way that people speak about him. We walk around a lot. A lot of people come up to Fonz and the way that they show gratitude and appreciation for what he has shown. And I think a lot of that's through vulnerability. I've recently come in touch with my vulnerability a lot because I don't like being vulnerable, but there's such a humility and about being a man and being able to face that. I think that's why a lot of my past relationships didn't work, because I was too prideful to be honest with what I struggled with or why I would be the way that I am. Because to me, it didn't seem like that much of a problem. I was too prideful to recognize that these last few months of my life have not been ideal in the way that I treated people and the way that I do things. And it takes humility to step in front of my friends and say, hey, I'm sorry for the way that I acted. And that's something that someone like Fonz is like, it inspires you to be okay with the humility of being a man. We're so in touch as friends. We love each other and we spend all the time together. And people are like, you guys are fruity, like this is weird. And we're so okay with that, because what are you doing with your friends group? What have your friend group accomplished? My friends are champions. My friends are amazing people. They have conquered so much in life that most grown adults will never even touch. And that's not to say that out of pride, but it's like, look at what we can, why be so prideful that you're not willing to show the times that you need to be vulnerable and have humility and just love your friends, man. I think love is a great thing.
Do you think that what's the fear I feel? I'm trying to apply it to my life and go, the moments where I feel like I should be vulnerable, but I hold off. I wonder what the main fear is, like what coming across as weak. Maybe there's like a persona that you are maybe trying to uphold, and then going against that and being vulnerable kind of like might ruin that, and maybe there's like praise coming from this thing, and so you don't want to like show up in a different way. Do you feel like what do you think gets in the way of you opening up and sharing more of your stuff in your life?
I think it's funny because I've always been kind of a sensitive kid. Like, I'm not like, I wouldn't say like I cry all the time or anything, but I'm very, very in tune with like the sensitive and soft things in life. And it was always kind of like a stark contrast compared to what I do.
Yeah.
And at first it was kind of like I need to hide this side because I'm supposed to be this badass fighter kid. I'm supposed to be the karate kid. And then what shifted in the past couple years of my life was like, nah, I am that kid. So I can be whatever I want, because what are you going to do about it? And then when you shift that perspective, I was like, I've done everything I wanted to do. I walk into a room, and if you have a problem, I can beat your ass. But I will also talk very openly about what and why I fear things and I'm afraid of things. And I just think that, like, especially working in the fitness community, like, you see the urge to be masculine. Everything's a competition. And that's the one difference between my niche and a lot of my friends' niche, is because when you work in the gym, the like lifting aspect of fitness, who's strongest, who's fastest, who's the toughest. And in jiu-jitsu, in fighting, I have the advantage in everything. And so when I take that pride aspect out, it becomes a lot easier to be vulnerable. And I had to shift my insight on that. And some people get upset by that. I'm like, I do not care. Like, I was 130 pounds when I was training in Florida, and I was a purple belt. Not the greatest, but I'd been training for, 12, 13 years at that point. And I remember a cop came in, and he was like a 190-pound cop, just buff as could be. And he came in, got his ass kicked by me, and he signed up that day because he was like, what kind of sport is this possible in? And he had been lifting for years and all these things. So when I take that perspective, I don't have any problem being vulnerable. What are you going to do about it?
Dude, that's pretty profound. I've actually never heard that before. So normally fighter, tough guy, X, Y, and Z. But the real tough guy is the one that doesn't care about the outcome and has the courage enough to speak and explain what's going on in his life, because he doesn't fear the outcome. And being a world-class fighter means that you're not worried about the outcome, because if there's any conflict, you can just beat their ass.
Somewhat. Yeah. I mean,
that's so good, dude. That is so good.
It's not that I walk around in that sense, but it helped me come in terms with it. And now that I've embraced it, like, I stepped into this realm so deeply that, like, I'll never go back to pretending like I got to be tough about something, And I think there's a lot of broken people in fighting. I will say there's a lot of rough people. There's a lot of criminals. There's a lot of, bad people in fighting. And, there's a lot of bad people in fighting. And I think it's funny because you step into a training room and you will have cops training next to the biggest stoners, training next to a dude on parole, training next to a 120-pound female, training next to a husband and a wife, training next to a 12-year-old kid. And the unity in that is peace. And that's another big thing that has helped me come in terms with that, is like, how often Like, think of the last 5 years of your life. You've gone through a significant amount of things, right? When is the last time you felt utter peace? When was the last time all the voices turned off in your head, all the worry? Not a lot of times, especially as men. And we as men, we always struggle with that inner voice in our head, And I've learned throughout the years and seeing this that I was like, why am I always able to handle stress and factors and these difficulties so well? And it's because before I even could ever think of something stressful, I started fighting when I was 6 years old. I had an outlet that makes you find peace. If I go lift and I have a bad day, I'm still thinking about what I have as a bad day the whole time. If I go run, I'm thinking about what I had wrong on that entire run. When you go fight, you get two choices. You can worry about what you got going on and get your ass beat, or you can let this go and you can focus solely on what's in front of you. And that's why I call fighting like an art. It's not even a hobby. It's an art. It's like a dance with, your soul and your mind to turn off and create something beautiful out of violence. I think that's the coolest factor, but it is one of the only times in your life that your mind will turn off. And so think of how few times you've had your mind go silent in the past few years. Imagine if you could have that every single day. 3 to 4 hours a day, mind just turns off. And at a certain point, it's never about the sport. It's about the peace that it brings. And so then I can go forward and be a better boyfriend. I can be a better husband. I can be a better friend. I can be, a better son to my parents. And that peace is more powerful than anything. And then, the vulnerability is more, that goes hand in hand with peace, and you become the well-rounded man through violence. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's also, I guess, comparison points. Like when you're dodging punches and trying not to get choked out and you make it out of that, fine. Then you stub your toe, you're less phased because...
I ain't gonna lie, I hate stubbing my toe a lot more than my ass beat. That's an unparalleled pain, but no, yeah.
I know what you're saying. Though, but I also think it does create this element of tough. There's a toughness about you where
the tenacity behind it. If I could go through all this, what is this supposed to be?
Yeah, you can naturally just be a bit more calm. Mm-hmm. I like how you talk about this peace pillar though being you're not thinking about anything else. I've spoken about this a few times, but I spoke to a surfer called Jamie O'Brien. He's a big surfer job in Hawaii. And I asked him what his happy place was, and he said being in a massive big barrel. And I didn't really elaborate too deep on that. But then I interviewed Laird Hamilton, who is a massive surfer. He invented the toe-in. So he was the first person to be towed in on a wave. And I asked him again, and I was like, "Is it a big barrel as well?" And he was like, "Well, sex isn't bad." And that's what he said. I was like, "Is your happy place going in a big barrel?" He's like, "Sex is not bad." And then he elaborates on it. And what we actually came to was, in both of those things, you're the most present. When you're in a massive barrel, all you're looking at is 10 meters ahead of you. You're not thinking about anything else.
Right.
And then when you're having sex with someone that you truly love, you're so present and you're really there because you're really enjoying it if you're in there. But it's probably similar to that fighting thing. The reason it can be a happy place is because you're so there. You're not anywhere else, or else you get beaten. You get beaten up. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like there's value in being able to assess this, whether you're a fighter or you're not. What are the areas in your life where you can access the most presence, and maybe those areas are your happiest of places?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, yeah. And then the benefit that comes out of it too. I think a lot of men build confidence on a fragile foundation, and so then it's very easy to see when somebody is insecure about a persona that they made very secure, and I think fighting, at least for me, in my experience with the past that I have, fighting has built a very secure foundation for the basis of my confidence, whereas some people don't like, but I'm like, what can you say about it?
What do you mean by building confidence on an unsecure foundation?
The most common thing that I see in men nowadays is a fragile ego.
What do you mean by fragile ego?
We see the expectations that we have as men in a modern day society, and we have such a like deep like, oh, I gotta be this man, you know, I gotta be rich, I gotta be tough, I gotta be strong, I gotta be fit. And it's okay not to be those things, but you shouldn't pretend to have them when you don't. You know, and like there's a factor of like, in a sense, fake it till you make it. But like obviously if you want to be something, you got to believe in it enough, even if you don't quite have it. But that's different. That's like building. I'm talking about there are a lot of fragile ego men. Like I think they say like it's like a 600% over exaggeration that men believe that they can fight. Okay. And I love challenging men to this ideology because their brain just like ticks a little bit, you know? But it's, you know, you see this a lot in like the lifter versus fighting community. Yeah, but you know, Bradley Martin, I'm 250 pounds. You get diced by a 140-pound kid who is really good at jiu-jitsu. And it's not anything against like, oh, well, then that takes away from its physical attributes. But people struggle so much, I think, as men, especially in social media, to like pitch themselves as this perfect person. And like you create a bunch of men that have fragile egos. And like I notice this with my friends when I get drunk. You know, they say like doing drugs or being super drunk will bring out the true self. And you know, it's funny to see the way that men act as like a compensation a lot of times when they're drunk around women or you know, their group of friends. And this is what I always notice, like there are bad fighters that give a bad rep to this, but most of the time if you're good at fighting, you will never get in a fight. You know how many fights I've been in the past 16 years of knowing how to fight? 2. And my friends are always more scared for me to do something than any of my other friends. But I'm like, I have never, like, I de-escalate any situation I'm in. I will never get in a fight. At a certain point, it's a legal liability, you know, but it's like the friends that have no idea, have never fought in their life are the one, yo, what do you say, man? You got a problem, you know? Or like, you know, like you ever had a drunk friend come out like, man, anybody tries you in this bar, I'm a slide for you, man. And I'm like, why? Like, yeah. And that's always where that compensation of building a secure foundation on an insecure, or a secure mentality on an insecure foundation is very frequent.
Yeah. I love this. Firstly, I'm thinking about there's an element here where there's a big difference between confidence and ego. And I'm going to read you something in a second, which I think will tie in perfectly to this. But there's this element of when you've gotten so many reps in and you're truly confident with your ability in whatever realm you're talking about, whether that's fighting, whether that is running, whether that's having sex, whatever it is, right? When you're truly confident in whatever that thing is that you're pursuing,
right,
you don't feel the need to overextend and 600% up yourself in terms of your ability. I'm going to read you this thing. It's a difference between confidence and ego. So, confidence is rooted in self-assurance and truth, doesn't need validation, makes others feel safe, inspired, or empowered, says, I know who I am, and I'm okay if you don't. And then ego is rooted in insecurity and comparison, craves recognition and superiority, makes others feel less than or dismissed, says, I need you to see how great I am so I can believe it too. Confidence is loud. Confidence is quiet. Ego is loud. Confidence doesn't have to prove anything. Ego always does.
Who said that?
ChatGPT.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, what a book. I was like, I need to read that one.
Yeah, dude. Well, I was having a conversation with ChatGPT and we got to the bottom of it. This. But the thing is about this is like you basically said that without the fluff. When you are overextending and it's like, oh man, like I'm going to beat that guy up, like rada. That's rooted in ego because it's, I want you to see how great I am so I can believe it too. They don't actually feel confident, but they want to show up in a way that makes people feel like they're confident so they can believe that they're confident.
Right.
But you're just not. It's fueled by ego. But your lens is, I'm not going to try and start a fight. I'm here to defend myself if I need to, but I don't need to prove anything to you to start a fight.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a confidence piece there where it's like, I know who I am and I'm okay if you don't.
Yeah. I think, I mean, exactly. Like, people will be like, well, why don't you fight? Like you could easily stop this. You could easily get involved. And like, I believe that people fight because they want to prove to their girlfriend or to their friends or to themselves that they're a tough man and their size is important. I have gotten my ass beat so many times. I have been completely humiliated. And bro, I've had some 130-pound woman just destroy me on the mats. Like, basically, I've the only time I ever broke my foot was by a girl that weighed like 130 pounds, right? I've gone through all that, so I don't have to prove anything. I don't want to. I don't need to. There's absolutely no desire in my heart to ever do that. And I think it's just some people just got to experience that.
I feel like there's power in like realizing that you don't mean shit.
I keep like pointing this back to fighting, but I think everybody should get into fighting. I think it's such a good outlet, specifically jiu-jitsu. Some fighting is a little bit hard, but
what is it about BJJ that makes people that get into it feel so called to share it? It's like a religion.
They're very passionate about it.
It's literally like a religion. My best friend loves jiu-jitsu. The guy that is coming in straight up to here, I'm gonna go and roll with him for tomorrow. I'm not competent at all.
Wait, why won't you do that with me?
I mean, I'll do it with you.
I got a gym that we can do it in.
I mean, I'm down. I'm down. The thing is, so there was one of the first times I went rolling with a guest was Toby Pierce. He's a massive business guy in Australia, and he invited me on the pod at the end. He was like, "You should come and train," and I actually showed up. The next day, I went. And I showed up. And when I showed up and finished, at the end, he was like, most people don't ever show up.
Yeah.
I invite them and they don't come.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an instant respect just by stepping foot in the door. And there's something about this BJJ community that treat it like a religion. It's like someone trying to spread the word. And be like, that guy's trying to spread the word right now.
He's pissed.
But yeah, and so what is it about BJJ that you feel like makes the people in it feel so called to share?
So let's run a quick breakdown. Jiu-jitsu is the art of grappling, submission, and subduing, right? You use a mix of wrestling and judo to get people to the ground, and then you use submissions and subduing to control, submit, and subdue an individual, right? The beauty of jiu-jitsu is that it's for everybody, especially smaller people. There's not a lot of sports that are cohesive with size. So I recommend jiu-jitsu for women every single day of my life. I got famous on social media for teaching women self-defense. I used to teach female dominant groups, sororities, bartenders, airline attendants, all throughout the United States, self-defense, because jiu-jitsu works so well. I have an entire curriculum for women's self-defense because it's so cool. I kind of mentioned this before, but like, you could have a room of the most fiercely different people and they all come together under this one passion. And it's a very respectable thing. Like, for women, it's a little bit hard to get into it because sometimes it's like, oh, I don't want to roll with men. And then once they're in it, dude, they're like a homeboy. Like, they're like, you want to fight? And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. And then you just get your ass beat by a woman, you know? And like, but you give that woman a confidence she never had, okay? The lawyer that has a family of 3 and has no time except for the 2 classes a week comes in there like a religion because it's the one time he gets to step away and have an outlet. You don't understand how badly people want outlets and peace in life. And not only that, I can go sit on a mountain and get that peace, but I still have to hike back down the mountain, and then what? You know, it's like, it's something so simple. You come in, you come out, but you gain something. You gain something very important, and you never stop. There is a totem pole that will never stop growing. There is never a best person in the world in jiu-jitsu. There are so many upsets in the sport because you'll have somebody that has 70 championships and some kid from Brazil comes in and just annihilates him. And it's so fascinating. The community's gotten a lot bigger, but I think it's because, and like, there's 2 very segregated sides. There's the pros, and they're just There's just such a difference in level and in the people that are pros in jiu-jitsu. But it is the welcoming, wholesome, and the loving aspect of creating a safe environment for absolutely anyone and everyone to step into, gain something from, and have an outlet in. Women specifically, big guys that are trying to lose weight, like a lot of people are like, oh, I really want to try jiu-jitsu, but I want to wait till I get in shape first. And I'm like, that's like, I'm like, why? Like that's the whole point, a woman that got assaulted, I've worked with thousands of women that have gone through some of the most traumatic things you could have ever imagined. And I showed them one lesson, and years later they'll DM me, you have no idea how you changed my life. And I had no idea. I was just solely teaching, and I've heard some of the worst stories you have ever heard of your life of what some women have been put through. And so for them to find that love, and then not only that, but like you go through something like that, you're going to have a hard trust of men forever in your life. But then you go in there and the 270-pound dude that, can kind of sits on you sometimes and you can't breathe, he's your best friend. And the instructor treats you like their own daughter, and like you have all these girls that are in unity doing the same thing. And like, of course, men can do this, but I really pitch it for women and for like, if you've ever just struggled to like find yourself, I was a nerdy, weak kid growing up, but I was so good at fighting. And I was just like, I got this though. And it's pretty cool. And, like you can go anywhere in the United States and find a jiu-jitsu gym. Honestly, anywhere in the country. Everywhere I go, I train jiu-jitsu. I've trained in Japan. I've trained, Canada. I've trained all over the United States, pretty much every state. I've taken tours and trained at all the best gyms in the world, and it's just such a community. I can walk into any place in the United States and walk into a jiu-jitsu gym and immediately have a similar family to what I have at home. That's why I started a jiu-jitsu gym at such a young age, because I was like, it's not about being the best instructor in the world. It's about creating a community that feels safe. And my students, Nomad Jiu-Jitsu in Daytona, I love you guys. They adored me because it was like we had a family. It was the best family ever. And so that's the importance of jiu-jitsu that people don't see. And they're always like, what's the hardest part of jiu-jitsu? Just like you said, it's walking through the door. Most people will never show up.
Yeah. And so that same guy, Toby Pierce, the reason he got into jiu-jitsu was one specific thing. He was a CEO of a company. They were doing really well. He ended up exiting out of that for, I think, 400 million.
Like,
and but when he was in it, he was a CEO when he started basically doing the jiu-jitsu. He had a mentor, and the mentor said to him, you should do jiu-jitsu. And he goes, why? And he's like, you need to be humbled. And he's like, why? He goes, well, you're the big dog. You're the CEO. You have 300 employees, and every single day, all 300 of those
praise you as the
look
big
up
dog.
to you, praise you, and tell you you're doing well. They tell you yes. They rarely say no. And you can leave that on a high horse because that happens every single day. And then you can walk into the gym and have this tiny little woman put you in a headlock and choke you out. And you're this big, buff, strong, muscly guy. And he's like, and you need to be humbled. And there's an ego that can be developed when you're constantly getting praised, naturally and rightly so. So being able to put us in position and in situations where we aren't the big dog and we actually feel innocent and so small and like incapable is humbling. And I think, honestly, as I speak this, every time I speak to someone that's a BJJ, I'm like, I should probably go there more. But I think there is this element there of if there's a way where we can be reminded that actually in the grand scheme of things, we don't really matter, it removes the ego a bit more.
Yeah, Chris, you honestly explained that kind of better than I did, which is embarrassing. But like, it's true. Like, if you are a weak, nerdy kid, you're already humble. But you get to go in there, and because of your tenacity, you get to beat the big dog CEO that just sold for $400 million and walked into something thinking the same thing. Same way as that cop walked in years ago into my gym and signed up that day because he was like, never in my life would I imagine that. And I'm a cop. What happens if that kid's, I run into him on the street or something, like.
He has a gun, but.
everybody, well, that's fair. Everybody gets something out of jiu-jitsu. I've seen a lot of women that just wanted the community and the friends. I see a lot of men that are going through a terrible time in life and need this. And, a lot of times in my gym, I would let them train for free if they didn't have the money to do it, because I saw the need for them to have something like this is way more important than anything money brings. And being a leader as well. Like at first I got jiu-jitsu as a confidence building, and then as a leadership factor, leading hundreds of people that look up to you. And then being a coach is a lot more than that as well. You step out of the class and you're still a coach at all times. People are calling you late nights at hours. I've had to bail students out of jail. Like you're a very hands-on character because you're like the perfect in-between, between like a parental figure, a leader, a friend, and all these factors. So like that was my benefit out of jiu-jitsu. Plus, jiu-jitsu built everything I have in life. My entire social career is built off of jiu-jitsu. And so like everybody gets something out of jiu-jitsu, and it's such a beautiful, everybody like ask anybody, why did you get into jiu-jitsu? And every story will be different, but they're so passionate about how they explain it. And yeah, it's kind of like a cult low key, but like it is very healthy, positive cult.
Yeah. But before we press record, I said before we've,
it's like we're not recording.
I said like before we press record,
right.
I was like, when was the last pod you went on? You said 2 years ago. And then you're like, it's good. Lots has changed since then. Like life's very different from 2 years ago. What's changed, and what's been like some of the main pivots and changes in your life that is different to the last time you've spoken about it?
Okay. 3 years ago, as of like when I was like 21, I guess it'd be more like 3.5 years now, I was homeless. I had nothing for me. I was sleeping on a friend's couch, had no money, no nothing, complete loser, right? I used to steal sandwiches from Publix, which was a grocery store in Florida, because you could order them to go, and then they would pack it up like it was paid for, and then you could just walk out with a sandwich. That's how down bad I was. Okay, I'm sorry. It happens. You go through things. And at that time, I had like 2 million followers on social media, because I used to be very, very famous for my self-defense stuff, and it got deleted because, as I said, I was promoting violence, but whatever. It was extremely embarrassing to me. It was a massive guilt in my heart to have people praise me when that was the life I was living. How do you do this life? That's so cool. You're so famous. And I was like, this is a lie. Low key, like this is just a complete lie. And so when I lost that social media account, I was like, you know what? Maybe this is my opportunity. And I have a very important friend to me. His name's Woodford Myers. This kid does something stupid like $4 million a week off of one of the biggest manufacturers for supplements in the United States. And he met me when I was 18, years before that. And I had absolutely nothing at 18. And he goes, I always saw something in you. And I remember sitting with him on the beach in Miami, and he goes, the most important thing you can do in a phase like this is just disappear. And he calls it F off of everybody, anything, going out, disappear from the world, and fix yourself, fix your soul, find your happiness, find your why. So I said, all right, let's do it. Disappeared for 6 months, came back, started working for the company I work for now as a photographer. And then I started working for advertising. Then I started product design. And then I became the creative director, all within a year span. I had met my girlfriend at the time, my ex-girlfriend, and, built a relationship out of that, and it's very hard to build love when you have nothing to offer, and so that was an ego check for me, and then creating a social media, but through a positive air and an honest air. Okay, I'm going to come back, but this is what I'm doing. And then at the time, my coach, who had been a coach of mine for years, went to prison. And that was a huge detriment to me, because that was like a father figure to me. And when he went to prison, name gets slandered. My name is associated with that, everything downhill. And I lost the gym that I moved to Florida to help build. And that's where opportunity came in, where I had another black belt say, hey, why don't we create our own gym? So then I started a business. I started Nomad Jiu-Jitsu Club. And then I had a passion, and I had like my little baby too, you know? And so from that point forward, everything changed, right? And then not only that, that's when I went to Austin and met all these people in Austin, and I was like, maybe I should move out here, which was crazy to me because I'm like, I have everything in Austin, or Daytona, you know, I have a business, I have good people, but I was like, I need more. Like I've outgrown this city. And I saw a TikTok recently that said like, there's some girl and she goes, there's going to be a plane that comes to take you out of your hometown. Get on that plane. It's very important. And Memphis was never a problem to leave. I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I never really had much ties or heart to that city, but Florida, I had to leave it. And so when my boss was like, when I visited in 2024, was like, I promise you in 1 year, you're going to move here. And I was like, no. 1 year on the dot. Bam. Hi, my name is Sage Bender. I just moved to Austin, Texas. And once I moved to Austin, it immediately raised my value and standards on life. And that's why my relationship didn't work out, because I started that relationship in a hole of Daytona. And when I realized the opportunity and tenacity that I had in a bigger city with bigger opportunities, I outgrew the person that I was with. But with that came a lot of opportunities. With that became my walk with faith, and it's been on and off. But like immediately moving to Austin, I had like 6 people invite me to church and say like, hey, been thinking about you, been praying about you. And I didn't talk about God once. Horse is peeing in the background. Sorry, guys. I didn't talk about God once in the 5 years that I lived in Florida. And I honestly just was like, I really don't think he exists, like in all reality. And coming to Austin, I just had such a different mindset, and it was such a different approach. God is alive and well in Austin, Texas. I'm just saying. And I'm not going to say I live the most Christian life, and I'm not going to say I'm the best Christian, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. And I think it's very important that a lot of kids in similarities have gone through the same thing. So in terms of this whole etch of experiences, the icing on the cake was I had a very best friend, Kyle Moser, and I had another very good friend of mine, and they were coming back from a bar in Orlando, driving back to New Smyrna Beach, and there's a drunk driver with their headlights off going the wrong way down a highway, and he ended up dying from a head-on collision, and my friend Devin came within inches of his life. Devin lost his girlfriend and her friend as well. And it was, in terms of Daytona, that was the very centerpiece of all our friends. And it destroyed us. And it destroyed me because I had never really been through something like that before. And I also had a very bad drug problem at the time, where I was surrounded by friends who were always doing drugs. And I remember at his memorial, we had 3.5 grams of a substance that should never be snorted. And we snorted the entire thing. We spelled it out in his name, and we snorted the entire thing between a group of like 5 people. And I remember sitting on the floor in my room, like basically seizing out by myself, sobbing tears. And it was probably the lowest point of my life. And that's a very vulnerable thing to admit. But you have never wanted to change your life more than digging a hole that deep. And so from that point forward, I was like, I will never be in that situation again. And so in terms of what's changed, what happened out of the next 2 years was a complete shift in my paradigm, my mindset, my mentality, everything. And like coming to Austin has been such a blessing. And like, that's just the surface level stuff. I've been through so much in the past 3 to 4 years of my life, but I'm happy to be here because I love failure. I love the fear of failing. I love failing in general because it just always builds something better. I think everything that happens is exactly how it should happen. And I have never once regretted anything that has happened to me, no matter how bad it was. And I embrace it at this point, and I live life very positively in that aspect. All that stuff messed me up a lot, but it's okay. I'm very happy that it happened because I wouldn't have changed if it didn't. And I was on a path where sometimes you need to get slapped in the face to realize that, you're feeling pain or you need to change.
That experience at the memorial, what main aspect of that was a wake-up call? Like, if you go back to that time, like, what was going on in your mind, and what was the main thing where you're like, I need a change? Like, what was the realization?
That we all just lost a very best friend to all of us, and that was what we thought was the adequate way to grieve. And I was like, I'm not in good hands, and I'm not in a good place, and I'm too okay with this lifestyle. And that was a point where I stepped back. Because it's just, I like to party. Don't get me wrong. I love a good party. I love a good bender. I love a good rave. I have a time, and all my friends do too. But there has to be a line. And I think the modern day society of embracing this culture is very dangerous. I'm luckily somebody that I can go sober on the snap of a dime and not really have a problem or like withdrawals or, like a problem quitting certain things that a lot of people are addicted to. And I think that that's not the case with most people. And so it's very dangerous to pitch positivity about that style of life when people don't share that same capability. And so, like, people know me as the bender method, where, like, anybody can be locked in, but go rip a bender till 6 a.m. and run 10 miles at 7 a.m. and then get back to me. That's the real difficulty in life. And I coined it like the bender method, the duality of man. And so, like, yeah, it's okay to have your fun, but don't forget to step back, because you take a blink of an eye and all of a sudden you're in a deep hole. And that's why it's important to have friends that understand the balance. And I think fitness is a huge factor in that, because it's like, why do I feel so bad about partying? Because I'm not able to make my run, or I'm not able to lift the next day because I'm so hungover, or, my body's weak, it's ravaged, I didn't eat for a day, so I think fitness is a great way to balance that, but make sure you have friends that are always on the outside that can see in.
Yeah, like having that realization of where the line is probably quite important, right? Because
especially being young and like in a party city, like Austin's very socially active, but like not all cities are like that. Like where I am in Memphis, there's no like going out scene, Florida's a bunch of dive bars on a beach, so it's like there's a difference, but sometimes that's worse,
Yeah. Yep. And you mentioned that your faith has been a bit like, it's been a bit back and forth in terms of like sometimes it's more, you're more religious and more strict with it, and then you've let it slip. In terms of like your relationship with Christianity, God, and faith as a whole, like where does that sit with you, and what kind of impact does that have in your life?
I grew up extremely religious. Both my parents are diehard Christians to the point where it was very, very overbearing. Like it's very important, I think, to raise your kids in faith, but it's also important to give them the choice of freedom and experience that life rather than being taught to why I should avoid things. It was always a do not do this. And so what that caused was, and like I was terrified of my parents. I had a Japanese mother, but when I stepped out of that shelter of their home, like I wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody that wasn't, to be fair, my church was a little bit of a cult. But I wasn't allowed to hang out with anybody outside of my church. And we were founded in the 90s. And we decided that God wanted us all to live in the same neighborhood so that we could keep each other accountable as a community. So the only people that I lived with were my church. The families all had kids at the same time. These kids grew up together, and these were the only kids that we were allowed to hang out with. We were all homeschooled. And man, that sounds kind of bad now that I think about it. But yeah, lot of bit of a cult-like mentality approaching that. My parents weren't so, yeah, it was a little bit of a cult. So, but I get it. It's like,
do you feel like that made you rebel?
Oh, 1,000%.
Because when you moved to Florida and you kind of had that not as an option, do you feel like that would have made you kind of go, I've been restricted for so long?
Oh, 1,000%.
Yeah,
like within a year of like, okay, keep in mind, I never drank before moving to Florida. You know, like other than when I was like, I turned 18, never drank, maybe once, never smoked a single substance, you know, never done any type of drug. Within a year of moving to Florida, other than some select key components, there's not a single drug that I haven't done. And I'll be perfectly open with that. Like, I don't care. But it was just such a rebellious factor. Like, I was like, it was my motto, I'll do anything once. I'll try anything once. And, you know, terrible way to live, by the way, when you're 18 years old in a city of people you don't know that's flowing with milk and honey of the worst possible kinds. So rebelled very, very hard left. And then so deep in that lifestyle that I started to resent God because I'm like, well, you put me here. And that's a very victimizing mentality that's so easy to adopt. And then coming to Austin, it was like, what's your excuse? And like, there's always that quote, like, no one cares, work harder. And like, you're the only one responsible for your actions. I find a lot of times people love to victimize themselves for what they've gone through in life. I've been through a lot, but that's my fault. And that's my life. And the only person responsible to make something of it is myself. And so hard left, hard right, hard left. Now where I sit with Christianity is like, you know, it's the problem with my faith is that it's very deterrent off of what I'm going through in life. You know how I said, like, okay, you need to be passionate in faith and then the other things will come to you. My problem is that I'm passionate in faith in phases. Something happens, boom, I'm veering left. We're back, boom. And so that creates a judgmental look. And I know people see that. I'm fully aware of my issues and I'm fully aware of the problems that I have. And it's just that from an outside factor, it makes me give the wrong impression sometimes of Christianity and my faith. And, you know, that's just me being honest. I'm still figuring it out. I still, you know, I have to reroute and rewrite my entire knowledge and reality of who God is and what is, because how I was raised made me resent God in every way. So now the phase I am in life is rewriting my testimony and, well, not rewriting my testimony, but rewriting my reality of Christ and faith and what it means to me and finding a style of life that allows me to put faith as the passion project in the forward direction and where I go, and praying that everything in my life either works in conjunction or falls out of my life by the will of God.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, given you grew up in such a strong faith and religion, like, I guess as we close this out, I'm interested to know, like, does that mean, like, in your mind, do you feel like you're married to the idea of believing in Jesus Christ? Like, do you feel like it's just a part of your life, or are you at the moment and in your life, do you like assess it and realize, okay, yes, this does serve me in X, Y, and Z, and these are the reasons why I am a believer and hence why I'm going to continue to do it? Or do you just feel like I need to be a believer because that's how I've been raised? The only reason I ask this, I'm just intrigued, is because I look at all the most successful people in the world and they all have some sort of relationship to a God. I grew up with no religion, no politics, nothing. So it's all had to be like self-taught and observed literally after the age of 18. And so for me, I kind of see it all and I take aspects of it and I kind of like take what serves me and what I think's good, and then I disregard the things that don't, and I struggle to kind of take it all as gospel. Mm-hmm. But for someone that it was so ingrained and so strong in their life, like, how do you sit with, like, it's like the only way, or do you feel like it's an assessment of like how it's serving me and how I'm gaining value from believing in this idea?
Man, I was deep in Christianity. Like, I did ministry school in Japan and was like evangelizing in the streets of Tokyo with a group of Christians trying to stop Japanese people who hate the idea of anything messing up where they're going and the idea of religion outside of what they're traditionally known, and stopping and asking them, hey, do you have any injuries or ailments or stress, praying over them, and then asking them if it was healed in that time and moment. Imagine having to do that. Terrible. Like, I'm not saying that's a terrible concept, but for a 16-year-old kid that doesn't even know if he believes that was so difficult to be forced into that. So obviously Florida becomes a hard left. I stepped completely away from Christianity for the first time in my life. No God, no nothing. And honestly, worst years of my life.
Look where your life went, I guess.
Bugs.
Yeah.
I moved from Florida to Austin, and I drove that road. I hadn't talked to my coach in a long time, and he was in a prison. And I happened to find that the route that I was taking, back road route, happened to drive straight through the city and way out in rural Pensacola, Florida. And something in my heart told me to stop by and visit. So I sat down with him, hadn't seen him in probably almost a year, and sat down in front of him. And he goes, Sage, you have no idea what God has done in my life. And I was very taken back by that because that was the last thing I expected him to say. And he goes, I was sitting in a fellowship circle when I had first gotten to prison, and they asked, why are you guys here? And I was so full of anger and hate. And I said, I don't know why God put me here. I've always gone to church. I've always done these things. And the minister looks at him and he goes, when's the last time you thanked God? And this guy was insanely successful. Former Navy SEAL, 10-time black belt world champion, unreal at judo, collegiate wrestling. He was a CRNA, a flight medic, like the most decorated man that I've ever seen, honestly, to this day. And he goes, Sage, I never thank God for a single thing that I accomplished. I was always willing to ask him for things that I needed. And I always prayed, when I was in buds trying to get through Hell Week, I sat there and prayed every single day. He goes, when I walked the high school graduation, 40 some years ago, there was a verse and it said, anything you ask in my name, I will grant. And he goes, the Sunday before I went to trial, I walk into church and it was the same verse. And he goes, I prayed for everything and I asked for everything in my life and I was granted every single thing, my accomplishments, all this, like I have a great life, but I never remembered to thank God for it. And when I drove out of that, I was so terrified because I was like, I've never thanked God for anything in my life. And that was the first time a perspective of Christianity has completely changed my ideology instead of what my parents' ideology said that it should be. And I started thanking God for everything. And I prayed for the first time in years on the way to Austin. And within like before I even reached Austin, somebody reached out to me asking if I had a church in Austin. And then within the first week, I had like 4 to 5 people ask me. I went to church for the first time within a month of being there. And I was so convicted. I was like, wow, Lord, like this is insane what you can do. And between Austin and moving here, like I've been through a lot and I've asked some pretty difficult things of him. And Chris, I have gotten every single thing I've asked God for. And I have not asked for easy things. And some of it wasn't great things to ask for. It's things I knew I messed up on and I needed forgiveness and I needed a way to make this work. Somehow made it work. And so the perspective that shifts now is thanking God, starting that as the foundation, and then building up from there. And so I'm still figuring this out. I'm very imperfect in the way I'm going about this, and I understand that. But I hope that perspective can help some people out there, because please don't forget to thank God. Because if you take everything out of your life and you take everything you got, how many times have you actually thanked him for what you have? So just little mindset. You never know what he'll put in your life to teach you to thank him. I'm terrified of prison, so.
Dude, thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's so sick. I commend you for what you're doing and how far you've come, and you're inspired and conquering, and it's just cool to see. And so I appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah,
and is there anything you want to say before we wrap up?
I think I just wish that people see me and my friends, and I think they put us on a pedestal sometimes of what we've accomplished. And we're all human beings. We struggle every single day. I've seen pretty much all my friends cry. We've gone through things and we battle our own battles. We're no different than everyone else walking the same walks and working through the same things. And just don't ever put someone on a pedestal and think that you're not capable to achieve those things just because you see someone that seemingly has everything. It's never as it seems. And just walk in confidence, walk in faith, walk in love, be kind to people, be honest. Those are the best things that I can offer you as advice that I personally struggle with. And I have a great life, but without those things, what's the value of it? So don't forget that.
Sage Bender, thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.